the real Fed posting. People have this term Fed posting, which is based on the concept that federal agencies like the FBI, CSA, NSA, your mail carrier, whoever, that these federal agencies, as part of their job, is law enforcement. And like the police, one of the tactics they use in order to boost their numbers, to boost their budget, the incentive structure incentivizes arrests. We stopped this crime, we stopped that crime because we arrested somebody. And so, in a corrupted system, what that ends up being is entrapment. So you've probably heard about federal entrapment or not federal entrapment, but local police setting up prostitution stings where a female cop will pretend to be a prostitute, will get you into a hotel room or a car or somewhere, and will get you to say something that is solicitation and arrest you. This happens to the present day. Now, I'm not soliciting, so I don't have to worry about that. And you probably shouldn't have to either. Although, there are people who do that, who find ways to avoid entrapment. But that's a pretty low-level crime, in my opinion, and I believe in terms of federal enforcement. Solicitation is not really a high-level crime. Human trafficking, as you start going up, we start getting to higher-level crimes. So, this question of entrapment and the incentives behind entrapment, then at the federal level, become, what is this term Fed posting refers to the proposed phenomenon that federal agents are posting radical, violent rhetoric on the internet, and that they are controlling with their agents, secret agents, that they're controlling radical, violent political groups in order to entrap people, in order to say, you were a part of this group, you were a party to a crime. If you hear that a crime is going on, if somebody tells you, I'm going to commit a crime, if Kurt Doolittle tells you, I'm going to cut the power lines, and you go along with Kurt Doolittle and you use a Kurt Doolittle profile picture and you call yourself a propertarian because you think, well, he's got some good ideas, and you go along with that, I can't guarantee you, I don't know what's going to happen with that. These things seem to drag on for years. Maybe, I believe that there are real people who are not involved with the government directly, who use violent rhetoric, and we call those people Fed posters because their behavior is identical to that of the theoretical, hypothetical federal agent who would, as part of their job, as part of their incentive structure, to get a pay raise, to get a slap on the back, to say, good job, you made an arrest because you posted violent rhetoric and you seduced young, mentally ill men into agreeing with that, being complicit to, being a party to it, being part of a group. And so we know people who have actually really done this. We know the case of Hal Turner, and we know other cases that are less publicized, less famous, of kids who have autism or schizophrenia who are on medications. You'll have federal agents tell them to get off your medication and to help me plan something, and oftentimes they use discussion of explosives. That seems to be their go-to because guns are pretty easy to test. I've never owned a gun in my life, But if a federal agent tells you to go buy a gun, you can test that gun easily. You can go out in your backyard, you can shoot at the ground, you can see, okay, it's a real gun, it works. But with bombs are a little bit mysterious, and they're a one-time use. You can't test a bomb. And so if you are a mentally ill, confused young man, and a federal agent teaches you how to make bombs, or provides you bomb materials, or tells you to go pick up bomb materials, or tells you to go buy bomb materials, then that could all be fake. You know, they could give you a bunch of clocks and wires and, you know, salt and flour and tell you it's a bomb. And as far as the law is concerned, you've shown intention to commit a crime, an act of terrorism, and therefore they've just won an arrest. So that's their incentive. And we are all aware of this, or we should be, that this is not something that has been historically exclusive to the right wing. I believe that it has also been practiced with regard to the left wing, not just in America, but in Europe during the Cold War. So we have to be aware of this, and we have to use it as, I think it's a useful meme, the Fedposting Meme, but the meme has limitations, and it has an additional layer, I think, of harm, intentional harm. I believe that when a federal agent entices or seduces through radicalization and arrest through entrapment, that's harm. That person is not really helping society. That person is helping themselves and their agency, but they're not really helping the rest of us. When we talk about Fed posting, and as I think as useful as that meme has been in terms of helping people be aware of this destructive phenomenon, which is real, but there's a dark side to this. There's a downside to this. Number one, it takes people who genuinely believe that violence is the answer, and it reduces their ability to have an honest conversation whereby their opinion might be changed. And this is a very difficult thing to navigate, and this point might not even be legitimate, but it is something to consider. So I'm going to leave that there and move on to the more important point, which I think is when people talk about Fed posting, they create a demonology. They create a demonology that there are federal agents that are out to get you. And we do have to be aware that there are negative forces in this world, and there are instances of entrapment that we have to watch out for. But at the same time, when we look at the tactics of the Stasi or the KGB or the NKVD in communist areas of Europe, one of their tactics and one of their strategies was not to employ enough spies to spy on everyone all the time. That wasn't feasible. But rather, you create the impression that you're being spied upon all the time as a mechanism of control. And I believe that the Fed posting meme, as much as it has a good side to it, we have to question it, and we have to see that it has a downside. And the downside is it entraps, again, we're going to use that word in a different way, it entraps people in a mentality that, number one, you're always being watched, and number two, that you're sort of being hunted. You're being hunted in this pre-rational sense, in the way that you can have a dream where you're being chased. You're being hunted, you're being chased. Someone's coming after you. And when you're in that state of fear, it's very hard to build things, it's very hard to be productive, it's very hard to be rational. And when we have this meme of Fed posting, the assumption is, implicitly, the feds are coming for you, they're coming to entrap you, they're against you, they're everywhere, they're listening to everything, they're all powerful, they have billions of dollars, and therefore, the solution to that problem is to keep all your thoughts inside And also it produces a radicalization, because if you believe you live in a country where the federal government is constantly hunting you and pursuing you and attacking you, that might produce some kind of radical ideas. You might feel completely alienated from the authority structure. You might feel completely separated from the rest of society, feel like society's against you, and you're going to develop, in response, in a reactionary way, this very hateful, bitter, spiteful, fearful, like Master Yoda says, fear leads to hate, and you're going to be very oppositional rather than constructive in your thinking. And you're going to say, you know, what's the point of walking back and getting a bigger picture and asking, you know, I wonder if this extreme ideology that I've gotten into, I wonder if this is realistic, I wonder if this is helpful, I wonder if the goals that I've set in my mind are my real goals or they are reactionary goals, right? I feel like the system is hunting me, I feel like the system is telling me I'm bad and evil and sinful and I deserve to be eliminated, and so I'm just going to do the opposite, rather than say, okay, what do I actually want? What do I actually want? What's actually important to me? And how do I build that and construct that in my life? So this seems to be a problem to me, because there's an element of truth to the Fedposting Meme. There's an element of truth to the idea that the United States government really does not have the purest altruistic intentions at heart. This used to be a common talking point in the mainstream left as far back as 2007, during the reign of George W. Bush. Today, there's like a political inversion that the left, so-called left, has undergone, where it now sees the CIA, FBI, NSA, TSA, CDC, etc. as infallible, which to me shows the superficiality of the so-called left in opposing destructive, systematic, oppressive systems. Did I say systematic systems? Yes, I did. The problem is that the methods of psychological operations that are used are not so simple as hiring an agent to run a Twitter account. I'm not saying that's impossible, but what I am saying is that I believe that narratives and memes, which can infect people, mimetic infection, I believe that is more bang for your buck, right? If you ask me, what would you rather do? Would you hire one guy to run one Twitter account, or would you rather spread a meme and boost a meme? Because we know how social media works. If you boost something in the algorithm, in a search algorithm, in a feed algorithm, you can make that idea popular, similar to how the music industry has made certain genres and certain songs and certain artists popular, which otherwise would have not been popular. People can be forced and coerced and advertised into believing things which they otherwise would not believe, into enjoying things they would not enjoy, into operating in paradigms that are not based in truth or empirical reality. I believe that is part of what the Stasi, KGB, NKVD, and part of what all security states, intelligence apparatuses across ideological lines, communist, capitalist, doesn't matter. They all use this tactic of trying to appear omnipotent, omniscient, everywhere and all-knowing. They want to project that image to inspire fear, to inspire a reactionary, radical, oppositional response rather than a logical, rational, constructive, positive response. No, I will not fall into your paradigms. You say that this is really important, and you create this Caducean superficial struggle of Coke versus Pepsi. Well, I'm not going to drink soda at all. So we have to be aware of this. We have to be aware of the fact that there are perverse incentives in the government, and because of those perverse incentives, part of their image is trying to put you in a feeling like they want to induce pseudo-schizophrenia. They want you to feel like there are a bunch of federal agents who are operating Twitter accounts trying to seduce you, trying to entrap you, trying to lie to you, trying to deceive you, trying to hurt you. They want you to be induced in a state of panic, because when you're operating in panic and fear, your fight or flight response takes over and you're not able to act rationally, logically, or make long-term plans. So they want everyone in a constant state of fear. If you learned anything from the past year, it's that fear is really good at forcing people to do what you want them to do. You say, hey, something's going to kill you, and you can manipulate people into doing anything. The solution to that is fearlessness, to say, I am not afraid of the consequences of my actions, so long as my intention is to create good consequences. Because we're not infallible, we're not fortune tellers, we cannot foresee the consequences of our actions. All that we can do is try to bring about the best consequences. So instead of having that Fed posting mentality, you have to step back and you have to say, yes, there's a lot of these malicious oppressive structures, but I'm going to not allow that weapon of fear to be used against me. I'm going to insulate myself from it. And there are different ways to do that. The insulation of religion, the insulation of having a stable structures and anchor points in your life. If you are a very internet-focused person and you do not have a lot of real-world importance, you don't have a lot of strong in real-world connections, you don't have those things that you trust in, that trust in family, trust in friends, trust in a religious group, something in the real world. If everything's in the internet's it's flux, it's a flood, it's mercurial, it's moving, and so it's very easy to get caught up in currents and fads and trends. And this is one of the ways that people succeed on social media, is they're constantly riding these and hopping on these. But the problem with that is, while it does produce short-term success in many cases, it also can produce long-term collapse. Because if you're riding those waves, yeah, I could ride a trend. I could pick the most controversial topic, the most fad topic, whatever's in the news. I could glom onto that. And to an extent, I think everyone does that in terms of the way that we talk about current events. Our sense of focus and attention is always impacted by the media that we consume, whether we know it or not. So we're all affected by this process. But if we're consciously trying to align ourselves with that, eventually I think we get burned out, because we're not following our agenda, we're following someone else's agenda. We're not doing what's in our best interest, we're doing what's in someone else's best interest. And if you remember the Bloomberg campaign, which I supported from an educational perspective of, Bloomberg is a great example of how politics actually works. He's kind of pulling back the curtain, because he spent millions and even billions of dollars, perhaps, I think up to $500 billion, $500 million, on his campaign advertising. And you saw these advertisements everywhere for a short period of time. Now that's completely in the past, that's ancient history, and as not just Americans, but as these hyper-modern internet denizens, our memories and our attention spans have been actively degraded. Part of this process is to destroy your ability to have long memory, to hold attention for a long time, to have long-term plans. And so no one remembers Bloomberg, but I think he was very educational in helping us understand the process of how, if you have basically infinite money, as the government does, you can prop up any narrative you want and you can get people on that. Bloomberg got something like 10% of the votes, which is not insignificant when you compare that to the other people like Klobuchar, Buttigieg, and all the ones we've forgotten, who worked really hard for months and months and months and couldn't do it simply because they had less money. So what we're learning here is that through money you can promote narratives that don't make sense, that aren't logical, that aren't intuitive, and you can still make those narratives popular. And I think the Fedposting Meme is part of that. It's part of a program of radicalization. It's part of a process by which people are induced into fear. Western civilization is ending, it's collapsing, you can't do anything. It's part of a Spenglerian cycle. Everything's just collapsing, and it's all hopeless. And the only way, the only solution is to take radical action, which never means forming long-term plans. It always means doing something illegal, right? It always means doing something so that the state can entrap you or use you as a scarecrow to hold up to the other side and say, look, don't hate us, don't hate merchant class, don't hate the financial system, don't hate capitalism. Left-wing people, capitalism is not your enemy. It's the rednecks. It's the people living in trailer parks who voted for Trump. They're the terrorists. They're trying to kill you. And then you go to the right-wing people and you say, no, it's black-on-white crime. It's millions of white people being killed per year. And I hear this from people legitimately from both sides saying, cops are killing millions of black men, blacks are killing millions of whites. People have this completely inflated sense of danger that's artificial, not local. Not to say that there are zero problems with either of these things, but on a statistical basis, if we're trying to make meta-level analysis quantitatively and understand what should be our priority right now, when we look at these issues, it's very reminiscent of Islamic terrorism, which is where a lot of this stuff started, right? The original Fed posting did not start with the right wing. It didn't start with the government saying, we're going to teach right-wing kids how to make bombs in order to entrap them. It started with, we're going to fund Islamic terrorism. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? Saudi Arabia, Salafism, is supported by the United States government. Couldn't exist without it. That is the biggest source of this Islamic terrorism. All the 9/11 hijackers were Saudi nationals, got support from Saudi Arabia. Osama bin Laden was not Afghani ethnically, he was from Saudi Arabia. He was part of that big family, that Saudi royal family, prominent wealthy family. So all of these are connected. The U.S. government, of course, funded Osama bin Laden. Zbigniew Brzezinski went over and supported him. And you can find pictures of him and articles. He's a freedom fighter. So they invented Islamic terrorism, and then they said, oh, actually, the Twin Towers was the end of the world, and we need to spend billions of dollars. We need to send these troops to go die. We need to kill a bunch of civilians in the Middle East because of 9/11. When they funded all of the ideology behind 9/11. Islamic terrorism, suicide bombings, all of these things did not exist. These are not perennial problems. These are problems that are, you take Islamic doctrine, you take the concept of jihad and you pervert it and you inflame it and you radicalize it to the point where you've got a bunch of Muslims in this kind of apocalyptic thinking. They think the world's going to end. They have to set up an Islamic state. They have to do something now. So they don't care about their lives. They don't care about the future. They're trying to bring about the apocalypse. That's not something that, was happening when the Ottomans were fighting in Europe or something, right? So that Salafism is not serving Muslims. It's serving the ability of a security state to create a scarecrow, to inject fear into the population, to gain the consent of the population for the expansion of the security state, the surveillance state, to centralize control around a mercantile elite. So we have to be aware of the way that these structures are used to infect people's minds, not through the old kind of like the concept of the spy who puts on a mask or a disguise and tricks you and gains it. No, most intelligence services are not using, like, most of the money is not going toward old-fashioned dudes with beards and mustaches and glasses, right? And it's not even the digital version. I'm not saying they've completely phased out this stuff. I'm saying that most of the money, most of the effort is going toward promoting narratives that induce fear. That is their goal, to induce fear. They want to induce fear in Muslims. They want to induce fear in the left. They want to induce fear in the right, so that the average person is incapable of making plans. So we have to be conscious of that, so that we can understand the process and try to insulate ourselves against it and say, no, I'm not going to live in this state of fear where I'm thinking federal agents are coming, so what's the point of moderating my position? What's the point of considering the other side? What's the point of stepping back from my ideology? What's the point of reassessing my beliefs and asking, what are my real priorities? What are my goals? What do I actually want? Am I trying to save Western civilization? Or is that an idea that's been implanted in me by a program of radicalization? Or is my actual goal not politics at all in this national sense, but is my goal to be part of a family, to be part of a group, to feel like I'm wanted, to feel valued, to feel like I'm contributing? And is that the reason why I'm hyper interested in politics? Because I want a friend group, a social group, I want a project, I want to feel like I'm saving the world. I want to feel like I'm doing something good. Is that my real motivation? Okay, well, if those are my actual goals, then maybe saving Western civilization is a false, superficial goal that doesn't actually get at the heart of what I'm trying to do. And maybe I should start to build that up, working toward my real goals in a more actionable way, rather than voting for a president or posting memes or being inflammatory and trying to troll the other side. Maybe I try to build myself up on a local level. Maybe I try to see what I can do in my own life right here, right now, today, rather than saying, well, we lost the election, we'll get them in the next 4 years. And just being resentful and bitter toward the other side because they stole the presidency from us, as opposed, and by the way, I'm talking about Hillary Clinton. I'm not talking about Trump. I'm talking about when Hillary Clinton said Trump stole the election versus via Russian hacking. Don't get confused here. I know it's very confusing. But in any case, the point is to reassess, and you can't think logically and rationally about these things if you're operating from a position of fear. And I believe that the Fedposting Meme is a tool of fear that is being promoted and boosted on social media to make you feel like there's this omnipresent security state. Now, that doesn't mean that the state is fragile. Just because the state is not omnipresent, it doesn't mean that the state's about to collapse. So that kind of black and white thinking, where it's either everywhere or it's a paper tiger, none of those are true. The state is strong, but the strength of the state is not in its physical agents operating Twitter accounts. The strength of the state is in its memes and its narratives and its mythos that it promotes through a financial, technological system, going back to television, radio, music industry, literature, William Shakespeare, whatever. Powerful people have always been interested in mythos. Mythos is the primary way that you gain power, not through bullets or swords. It's mythos, because how do you get a person willing to carry a gun or a sword? You ultimately do that through mythology. What is money if not a mythology? If you doubt what I'm saying right now, if these are new concepts to you, I would ask you to watch some other of my videos, and perhaps I should do a video. And I think there have been very good videos and work done on the theological origins of money by people like, C.A. Bond. And that's already out there, but I would like to say it in my own words, give my own understanding, my own presentation for those who would rather hear it from me than read a book or listen to somebody else. But just know that these are not my original ideas. I'm just trying to be yet another voice communicating them and tying together, pulling from different people what I think are the best ones. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, subscribe, follow me on Twitter at Jokkull, Jokkull, and mention me on Twitter, and we can DM, we can get in touch. I'm on a road trip. If you didn't know that, I'm traveling across the country and plan to do that through the month of June. So if you're interested in that, let's get in touch. Otherwise, thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.